Mission 4, calling all stations. Welcome to Elephant and Castle Station. This is a northbound service. This service travels to and terminates at Harrow Wealdstone. So hey there, Drawyah here, and welcome to Dovetail Games Train Sim Mods 2. Today, taking service along the entire length of the line from Elephant and Castle to Harrow Wealdstone. And so, well, it'll be a long one today, that's for sure. Do the alarm, set train up, and get ready to go. Total service time's around 15 minutes or so, meaning that, let's say, we'll be in train for a little while, we'll be doing an entire run of the line, so hopefully it'll be another hour or so of just giving you more facts, telling you more about the history of the Bakerloo Line, and yeah, it should be a good run this. Admittedly, it has been a couple of days now since I have done the entire line of the Bakerloo, and so, as well as a forerun, this will be a bit of a refresher for me, so we'll close the doors, set train to forward, and let's get going. Press the other warning just so that sim acknowledges that we've gone. So quickly sets the cab lights to off, since it's the requirements of the London Underground deep level trains. Stop the train from accelerating, so we're going a little bit over the speed limits. And yeah, here we go. Smooth sailing now. Departing from Elephant Castle, our next station shall be Lambeth North. Up to 15. So, one cool fact about London Underground is that, well, on mainline services, when you see a speed limit sign onto your left, on mainline, the speed limit changes after the rear of the train has passed the speed limit board. On the Underground, it's when the front of the train hits it. And so, with Bakerloo, it's like that all the way up to Queen's Park. But then we enter the mainline services, we enter the Watford DC line, and then following that portion to Queen's Park North, we follow the mainline rules, so speed limit changes to the back, not to the front. One of the bonuses of the Bakerloo line. Which is, yes, it is an underground service, but there's a lot more thinking that goes behind it. There's a lot more that you do need to kind of just have in the back of your mind driving the service out. Just a couple of moments, we'll hit the brakes, and we'll come to a stop. Facts about Lambeth North. So, when the station first opened in 1906, it was originally known as Kennington Road. So, opened as Kennington Road, stayed like that for a couple of years before it became Westminster Bridge. And then, about a year later after that, they then changed it to its current name of Lambeth North. So, it's had 3 names in its history. And, well, the Bakerloo Line has got a couple of those cases where they had an original name. And as the line upgraded, as the surface of London upgraded as well, things have slowly changed over the years. So open right hand doors, we'll monitor the platform, and we'll just see how that goes. What's this? Still the best in West End, London the Musical, limited season book now online. Presented by Dev Team in association with the show Dovetail production. Yeah, I do love the adverts in this sim. They've done a rather well job at this Dovetail in terms of actually creating adverts that look the parts. A bit of variation between them all. And just populate the entire London around with them. A lot of work's gone into those. A lot of thought has definitely been put behind the adverts. Right, departed about 20 seconds, so this will probably be the longest pause we've had in the entire service. As soon as we hit our next station, Waterloo, things will start to be a bit more hectic, so we'll close the doors. We'll try and leave as on time as possible. Right, let's go. To our left, we'll have the entry from the London Roads Depot, so there's the track points now coming to play there. So at this point, we now have trains departing from Elephant Castle, as well as trains that have entered the service from London Road. And therefore, this is now the busiest section of Bakerloo Line. We'll continue to stay busy until we hit Queen's Park, when then some trains terminate, Some then go as far as Stonebridge Park before terminating, and then this train will continue all the way to Harrow Wealdstone before terminating. So you have 2, 3, 4, 5. You have 6 service sets on the Bakerloo. So different starting points, different ending points. Actually, that's for one way. It's 12 in total for both directions. 12 places you can start and 12 places. Sorry, 3 and 3, 12 places in total where you can start and finish. Right, Waterloo. When they first planned the Bakerloo Line, Waterloo was supposed to be the original terminus. So, hence the name Bakerloo. It's the Baker Street to Waterloo Railway. But as the years went by, as they extended the railway, eventually it saw its way hit Elephant's Castle, and soon Camberwell. So station and tunnels at the end of the platform do continue as far as Camberwell. But in a couple of years, they'll eventually open up platforms, open up stations, extend the routes even further, and give Bakerloo a bit more of a journey time towards its eastern end.
Left unattended may be removed without warning or destroyed or damaged by the security services.
So, load the passengers, close the doors, close the window. Okay, we're about 10 seconds, but I think we can get away with just a few seconds early. Next station, Charing Cross. Right, it's around 5 o'clock now, 5:05, so this service will take us through rush hour in London, especially towards the latter stage of the route. So currently going through Central, currently going through Zone 1. This will be very, very early stages of rush hour. Those who finish work at 5 o'clock will now be heading to the stations. And then they'll continue about 6:30, and the service will start to quiet down a bit. Also, oh, I lied to you, sorry. It's Embankment, then Charing Cross. Right, someone found me there, sorry. Right, Embankment, then Charing Cross. Let's start to slow down the station here. Yes, Embankment has a connection with the Northern Line, the District, and the Circle lines. Slowly. Yeah, stop here. Right, open doors. And let passengers do their transfers. Close doors. And let's get going. Right, next station now is Charing Cross. Charing Cross, originally known as Trafalgar Square when it first opened. Eventually saw a connection to the mainline station in the late 70s, early 80s. So Charing Cross's terminus came first, then they built the Bakerloo Line, but the stations weren't connected for about 100 or so years before giving the connection between the underground services and the mainline services. So it can take about 5-10 minutes to walk down the tunnel here. Although certainly not as bad as the tunnel at, I can remember the station, Green Park. So connecting between the Piccadilly and the Jubilee lines. It's about 15 minutes of walking because the tunnel just goes on and on and on and on. If you ever go change at Green Park, then well, you'll know. You'll definitely know. Although one cool feature of that tunnel is the fact that when you start on Jubilee line, there's more grey tiles than blue tiles. And the closer it gets to the Piccadilly line, there are more blue tiles than grey tiles, and so it kind of transfers and kind of slowly changes as you walk down the platform. Speaking of the Piccadilly line, our next station is Piccadilly Circus. ahead. I mean, those signals are spaced out. They've got a bit of distance between them all, but just being in the dark tunnel, it just looks so close, so grouped up. It's I don't know, just being in a tunnel, distance doesn't look the same. Things look a lot closer than they really are, especially when it comes to lights. Do you remember that in the underground section of this line, signals have two aspects, green and red. There's no yellow aspects. That only comes to play once we hit the surface station. So when we hit the Queen's Park depot, and when we merge onto the Watford DC line, as well as the speed limit sign change, we also have to follow the mainline signals, so green, yellow and red aspect signals. Right, doors open. Once again, we've got the fantastic tunnel here at Piccadilly Circus, which opens up. You see trains passing on both sides. I don't know, I just love the station. Whenever I come to central London, I sometimes even just make the journey here, come out my way, just to hope that I do get trains coming to both platforms. I have been lucky enough to have that a couple of times. On one occasion I've even managed to record it on my phone. Perhaps I'll try and find a link to it somewhere. But I do like Piccadilly Circus. And last year, with the sponsorship with the Netflix series of Picard, they actually rebranded the station for a couple of weeks, Piccadilly Circus. Alright, well, next station is Oxford Circus. Circus transferred to the Central Line here, as well as the Victoria lines. The station I do frequent fairly often, as I do need to transfer something from the Central to the Victoria. Bakerloo, not so much from this station, but sometimes I may do if I need to get to the main lines at Marylebone, and that's if I ever need to travel up to Birmingham. So I know travel to Birmingham, I'll either go with Chiltern or, well, Avanti West Coast now. I've not actually been on Avanti yet. I've been on Virgin Trains a lot, but not yet Avanti. At some point I will do. I'll most likely be transferring here at Oxford Circus to get there. So don't forget, the Victoria Line also stops at Euston as well, so in terms of connecting to the mainline station on deep level tube, Oxford Circus is a rather good place to transfer at. Right, doors open. Onto the platform. You can see it's starting to get a little bit busier now. Fair few more passengers starting to enter the platform. And let's depart now to our next station at Regents Park. Regents Park is one of two stations on the Underground that does not have any surface buildings, so its ticket hall is underground, underneath the main road, and well, yeah, it's just it's a relatively small station, all underground, separate roads leading out different parts of the road, different exits leading out different parts of the roads, a couple of escalators down to a platform level. In terms of connections, Bakerloo is the only line that's not to the station. Starting to fall a bit behind on the service there in terms of the timetable, but we're not too far at the moment. We have plenty of time to catch up with that, especially when we are stopping at stations. See the light at the end of the tunnel now. The station slowly comes into view. stop. Doors open, and pretty much bang in there on there. Bang on time there with the 17:14:15 arrival. Wait a few seconds. Close the doors. Perfect. Bang on there. Bang on. Next station, Baker Street. So, Baker Street is a station I've covered a couple of times down these videos. The one fact I always use, the Sherlock Holmes mural on the platform, with little Sherlock Holmes murals on the side. Actually, also the split between the Metropolitan Line and the main Circle Line section. And, well, one station actually featuring the Wild Highways Volume 3 London Underground video game, or simulator. I know. Wild Highway 3, is it games or is it simulator? I don't know. Because there are some aspects that makes it a sim, but others that just hold it back a little bit. But yes, also one of the few stations that do feature on that sim, as well both the Circle Line stops there, as well as the Banklands. Only two stations on Bakerloo that interchange with the Circle Line. It's a little bit too harsh there, so we'll slowly accelerate to get to the end of the platform. And stop. Door open. And since we've got a couple of seconds here, we'll go and monitor the platform. Yeah, so that there is the older style of destination display on the, or train timing display on the platforms. You have three styles of them. You have that, the older one, which only displays the train destination and the time, and two bits of information, train number 1, train number 2. You have the newer displays used on more modern routes, so trains that have the modern signalling and all that. Well, each train have modern signalling, but just more modern trains, more modern routes. That features 3 next trains, plus a scrolling next train indicator. And also a subline at the bottom, which explains other facts like key updates on the TfL services, potential delays, potential events going down the line as well, and potential places to avoid. So new displays have that. And then on some sections, such as that on the Metropolitan Line, Amersham branch and the Bakerloo past Regents Park, you then have the National Rail style. And so that's where National Rail trains will show you like the time of the train when it's supposed to arrive and the destination, and the operator, and then on the ground it shows you the minutes left, how long until the train arrives, the destination, and then the operators being London Underground. Right, Marylebone, formerly known as Great Central, and the connection to the Chiltern Main Line. So, when the Chiltern Main Line first opened, it was known as the Great Central Railway, and it travelled from London Marylebone over to Birmingham Old Streets. At one point it did also have a connection to Great Western Railway, and so that formed as part of the new Norfolk Acton Main Line, which connects trains from Old Oak Common to South Ruislip via the track past Greenford Station. And well, yeah, so for a fair few years there was a connection, there was a contract and treaty behind Great Western and Great Central. They'd share services, share tracks, share routes. That way Brunel and his Paddington services could go to Birmingham, while the Great Central Company could then run their trains over to Paddington as well as to the far west. Although these days the Norfolk Acton Main Line has been severed with the works at Old Oak Common, and yeah, not a good bit of breaking that, I'm afraid. Whoops. Should still be in the platform, at least at the passenger doors. Yes, they are. A sigh of relief there. Come on, Drawyah, you know you're better at this. Yes, so what was I talking about? I was talking about mainline services, talking about connections between Great Central and Great Western. Speaking of Paddington, there it comes. Yeah, I've completely forgotten what I was talking about there, but yeah, there's a connection between two... Oh yeah, New Norfolk Accent, so it's now severed by the Old Common Works, which will form as part of HS2. And so nowadays, the parliamentary service that runs between South Ruislip and Paddington now terminates at West Ealing. So, after the contract went down, after the railways were privatised, and then, nationalised and privatised, there was one parliamentary service that still ran between South Ruislip and Paddington. But as lines having severed, that one service now terminates at West Ealing instead. So we're down here now, since there's a sharp bit of turn now. Mural in the station. It depicts the Great Head shields that are used to dig the tunnels on the Underground. So a Great Head shield is a giant shield, or giant wall, I guess, giant steel wall that they stick in front of a tunnel, and they're used to, dig in front of it. So they stick a shield there, they'll dig away with shovels, they'll put these concrete slabs around it to keep the tunnel structure safe, keep tunnel structure up, and then push the shield forwards, and repeat. So dig, 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 push, dig, 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 push, dig, 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 push. And that's how they create tunnels of the deep level tube surfaces. And, well, that mirror right there is kind of the design of the Great Head Shield, how it looks. And if you ever go to Bank on the Central Line, or if you cross between Central Line Bank and also in City Line Bank, the original Great Head Shield is actually still in the wall where you in the wall of the tunnel that is used to cross between the two lines. And so I've seen it a couple of times as I walk past, and well, it's a massive structure. And its whole purpose is to basically hold the tunnel back while digging a tunnel to stop it from collapsing around you. Next station, Warwick Avenue. Warwick Avenue is the second station on the Bakerloo Line. I think in Untitled Underground that doesn't have a surface building. In this case, unlike Regents Park, which is quite a grand ticket office underground with different exits to different sides of the road, Warwick Avenue is much smaller with just two staircases going from road level down to underground. Again, a little bit heavy on speed there, but this time our train has fully made it on the platform. After Warwick Avenue, our next station will then be Maida Vale, following that will be Cumberland Park, and very shortly we'll be up on the surface. Now, Maida Vale is actually a very historic station on the ground. It was the first station to be fully staffed by women when it first opened in 1915. So, during the First World War, actually we'll go before then, so when the Underground first opened, right until 1915, only men could apply, only men could work on the railways, as back then that was seen as a very masculine job to do. During the First World War, all of the men that were able were conscripted and sent over to France to fight. And so, as the station opened in 1915, during the First World War, they needed extra staff to keep the stations running, keep trains running. And so, Maida Vale was the first station to be fully staffed by women when it first opened. that goes along with one of the many things that the First World War did in terms of actually allowing women to get better rights than they'd had before. So back in the first stages of the 20th century, it was very much a case of women, what they could do, what women could have, was very limited. The First World War came out, all the men went to fight, a lot of women then stepped up, took over the roles that were then first seen as masculine and very male things to do, and well, the very first step in actually pushing for equal rights in the UK. And yeah, to this day, things have certainly never been better. A lot of improvements still need to go in terms of getting full equal rights within the UK, but compared to 100 years ago, things have certainly never been better. And when it comes to society, it's one of those things that does take time to change, especially when it comes to the mindset of people, in terms of actually allowing equal rights both within gender, both within race. And so, London Underground has played a massive part in that in the years. So, first station free staffed by female. London Underground was also one of the first major employers in the UK to also hire black people for the roles as well. So, in the 1970s, 1980s, Transport for London was seen as a very undesirable company to work for. Nobody wanted to work for the company, and applications were very, very low. And so, talks were made, and essentially, they tried to push for hiring along some of the more minority communities. And so again, perhaps the way they did it was not quite the best way of doing things. So they hired a lot of people over in Jamaica, brought them over to the UK, and then had them work at TfL with a few false promises here and there. But when you look back at it these days, TfL was one of the first companies to introduce equal opportunity. And, well, you look at people who work for TfL nowadays, it's probably one of the most multicultural companies in the entire country. And so, again, everything is a shaky start, everything is a shaky past, but in the long run, it may not be conventional, but it has certainly helped along the way. I mean, as a country, the UK have not been perfect. We've done a lot of wrong in the past, especially when you look at the British Empire and what they did and how they did it. But, I don't know. We are where we are today. Things aren't perfect. But, yeah. They are where they are today. Next station, Queen's Park. Our first station on the surface. Now climbing a rather steep hill at this stage, 2.1% gradient. And therefore it's a little bit of a climb now to get the train out of the tunnels. So right there, a train heading our way. This one going towards central London and presumably Elephant and Castle. Yeah, Elephant and Castle direct train. Start slowing down. Welcome to Queen's Park. You have two central platforms, which are the London Underground platforms. You have one on the left and one on the right, and those are the Watford DC platforms, so the lines that travel to Euston. Watford DC used to be part of the Silverlink lines here in London. In 2006, when they introduced London Overground as part of the TfL service mix, they then switched over to London Overground from Silverlink, and well, much more frequent services, much more high passenger usage, and completely renovated the line to where it is today. When London Overground was first announced, it was not a controversial one, but questions were asked about how it was planned and the way they were going to push it forward. I think these days most people agree that Overground is a much better step forward when compared to Silverlink, especially when it comes to the routing, comes to actually giving the London a orbital railway, and well, it's just a much better service overall. Silverlink was not a great service. They did hold the best on-time record for trains in the UK, but the problem with it was trains were like once every 2 hours at best, and so it was easy to keep a schedule that wasn't very frequent. Fewer gaps here on the track now. The electric just cuts out. So you can see the passenger compartment lights have now shut off. As soon as the power comes back, lights come back on. Slowly slow down the train as power comes in and out of the train. There you go, power cut again. Just a moment, power should return. Hopefully. Yes, there you go, lights have come back. So, more bond stock like the 2009 stock on the Victoria Line or the S stocks on the subsurface trains. Instead of just pulling their power directly from the track, they also have a battery on board which will power the lights for a short period after the electric's cut, just to keep passengers lit up within the carriages. So electricity is drawn from a third rail shoe here on the side of the bogie. So that runs alongside the electric rail, as you can see there. That powers the generator inside the train, which then powers up the train going forward and backwards, whatever. So let's go through that. We have a middle rail, and that is an earthing rail. So there's no power provided to the middle rail, but allows the train circuit to be complete when riding through the train. So without a fourth rail, the circuit's incomplete, the power's got nowhere to go, and therefore the trains won't power. TfL is the only service in the UK that requires a fourth rail to run. So you have power on the outside, running rail, earthing, running rail. Next station, Kensal Green. At this stage, we're now going up to 45 miles per hour, which is the fastest section of the London Underground Bakerloo Line. Also the top speed of these trains. Once the new Tube of London comes into play, they'll probably be able to do two things, which is one, increase the speed limit of the Bakerloo line, and therefore increase the speed limit of the Watford DC line, because they can go faster than 45, but because of these slow trains limiting the speed, they'd have to slow everything down in the meantime. But eventually, they'll be able to increase the speed limit of the Bakerloo, and with it, potentially being ATO, again that comes down to how they can manage the mainline trains. They can also increase the frequency of trains as well, so more trains, less time between them all, and running a lot faster as well. Next station, Waterloo Junction. The tunnel here at Kensal Green is a very satisfying echo when you sound the whistle. So I know that some drivers do like to just play around a little bit as they do enter the tunnel. Very nice echo, very nice reverberations. And again, Dovetail done a fab job of actually simulating that within the simulator. To 30 miles per hour. As we snake around to Waterloo Junction, to our left we'll have a depot. So this depot here serves the passenger trains on the Watford DC line, not Watford DC, that's the London Midlands, the West Midlands train depot. Services starting from London. the Watford DC line depot comes a bit further forwards, and then that'll be to our left hand side. Well, actually I could be wrong, that is an entry point coming to the side, so that could be, sorry, the Watford DC line depot. And it's later on, we come towards all the freight yards, and yeah, sorry, my mistake, that was the Watford DC line sidings. Walsall Junction, one of the few service stations in London to have both a high level and a low level. The high level station serves the West London line, so train travelling between between Richmond and can't be that. Trains between Stratford and Clapham Junction. And then down here, Watford DC between Euston and Watford Junction. So, originally, the service up there used to be only... go over to it there. So, up here you've got London Overground. That way is towards Shepherd's Bush and Clapham Junction, while that way takes you towards Richmond. Stratford, sorry. It used to be a freight-only line, but in recent years they have renovated it all and brought it back to passenger service. So it used to be a passenger service line, then in the 1960s it was downgraded to freight-only, and then in the early 2000s, when they were also in the stages of building the Shepherd's Bush and Shepherd's Bush shopping markets, Westfields, they were then also upgrading the line to increase passenger capacity and therefore open up today as it is now. So you've got new stations down the line, including White City, which was a former station, closed down, demolished, and have a new station built in its place, while some of the former stations were also built and reopened. One station, however, didn't make it, and I can't remember now, I think it was Fulham Road, but it's the former station just outside of Stamford Bridge Stadium, although that got replaced with West Brompton. So, not West Brompton, sorry. Yeah, West Brompton. So, West Brompton is an entirely new station on the line, and replaces that of the original station just outside of the Chelsea football ground. Although the odd platforms are still visible to see, if you head down to the main road and look over the fence, you'll be able to see the track, and you'll see where the two former platforms used to be on both the left and right hand side. And while there were plans to potentially reopen the station just for game days, the plans never really kicked off, and so yeah, the station stays closed and will likely remain closed until the end of time. It's kind of like that of Watford Stadium on the what's the name of that line? The one that was supposed to be reopened on the Metropolitan line. The Croxley Rail Link. So the Croxley Line, which was a line that went from Croxley over to Watford Junction via Watford High Street, used to be a passenger service, closed in the late 1990s, early 2000s, slowly saw everything stripped away, all run down, whatever, and when they built a new dual carriageway in Watford, they basically demolished the bridge, took down the line, and essentially severed it forever. The Croxley Rail Link was supposed to reuse past that line and sends the Metropolitan line to Watford Junction via Watford High Street and down the former line, including a station at Vicarage Road, the Watford Football Stadium, Watford Football Team Stadium, Vicarage Road. The line, however, is now postponed indefinitely, and, well, TfL again have run out of money, and therefore it looks like it probably won't be opening anytime soon. Which is a shame, because Metropolitan Line trains to Watford Junction would have been very useful, but, well, as it stands, probably not going to be the case now. Although, had Watford Junction opened, Watford Met would have then closed down, making it the first Metropolitan Line station closure in about 100 years. So previously it would have been 3 stations between Finchley Road and Baker Street, 2 of which now exist on the Jubilee, so Swiss Cottage, St John's Wood and Lords were the 3 stations that closed. Swiss Cottage and St John's Wood had since reopened. To our right, got one the stadium. In front of us we have a station very fastly approaching That again I'm braking way too late for. But this time, I managed to start slowing down a little bit earlier, as we had realised our slight mistake. I'm not a perfect train driver. I can run you a basic service, but they ain't perfect. Right, sprint train's the end of the platform, and let's stop it. In terms of timing, we're about 1:20 behind schedule right now, so not as bad as I thought it would have been. But again, not perfect. Right behind us, we've got the North Circular. North Circular being a ring road within London and allows for express travel between the northwest and northeast. Oops, wrong side. So, North Circular covers about 180 of London, above the Thames. And there's also a South Circular, like there's 180 south of the Thames, but it doesn't really count as a... It's not really a North Circular, or not really a South Circular, it's just a set of roads that are designated South Circular by name. They're just standard London roads, very busy, full of traffic, and not very fun to travel on. But if you ever get to the North Circular without traffic, then, well, you know it's a very easy road to go down, very easy to skip large swathes of London without having to deal with traffic. And also, there's an IKEA at the end of it, the IKEA at Wembley, which is very, very nice. Not my local IKEA, but well, we have stopped there a couple of times and driving through the area. Mainly for the meatballs. Definitely for the meatballs. We don't even go shopping half the time, it's just meatballs we like. Next station, Wembley Central. Just about to cross the West Coast Main Line. Just like that, now gone from the right hand side of the West Coast Main Line now to the left. Platforms again slowly starting to build up now. At this stage, you don't have too many people going northbound. You mainly have people going to the south, so those travelling towards central London to make connections and then head back home. Very long platforms here at Wembley Central. They are built to hold full 11 car Class 390 sets. So on important days and game days, the middle platforms are reserved for 390 Pendolino sets. And on the far side, you've then got the standard London Midland slow line station platforms. Although it's very rare you'll have a mainline train stopping here. Only during very major events. Right, next station, North Wembley. And very soon, towards the end of the line, we've got North Wembley, South Kenton, Kenton, and then Watford Junction. Harrow Wealdstone, sorry. Harrow Wealdstone, not Watford Junction. Bakerloo Line trains used to travel to Watford Junction, so when it first opened, it ran up to Harrow Wealdstone. Then they trialled a short period of going trains to Watford Junction. They then realised that trains to Watford Junction just slowed down the entire Watford DC line, therefore added too much congestion and too many services for a part of the line that doesn't particularly get too many passengers. So then brought back the Bakerloo Line as far as Stonebridge Junction. And, well, it was too short, and there was too many people between Harrow and Wembley that need to catch a train. So then reinstated the original service back to Harrow Wealdstone, where it runs today. So Bakerloo Line, 1972 stock, at one point did run to Watford's, as it was in the very early stages of its introduction to Bakerloo that they had done this trial. So it was early 70s they introduced Bakerloo, the 1972 stock, 1972. They introduced these for the Northern Line. Then when they built the 19-something stock for the Bakerloo line. They transferred these to the Central line, so Central line via the high knots loop only. So had 62 stocks for the entire service, and just high knots the 1953 stocks. I'm trying to remember now. What did 1992s replace? 1959 stocks. So you had 1959 stocks running the Central line, and 1962 stocks running just the high knots loop. As well, they needed more trains, and these were allowed to run for extra services. So they were introduced in 1990, and then in 1992, they introduced 1992 stock, which started in 1993. These were then transferred to the Bakerloo line, so the rest of them were transferred. So you had half on the Bakerloo, half on the Central. The half on the Central then transfers to the Bakerloo, and then, well, to this day, Central line now operates 1992 stocks, the Northern line on 95s, and the Bakerloo still runs these trains to this day. And, well, TfL do hope that within the next decade or so they can replace these. But it all comes down to when the new tube for London is ready. So they've got to build a new train, pay for them, because financing at TfL is a little bit low at the moment. So when they built the Class 3, 4, 5s for the Elizabeth line, the Crossrail project, bought the trains, couldn't afford them, so they sold them all to a banking organisation and now have them back on a lease basis. They pay a small fee a month to run them, but have now seen a massive jump in income with the extra money they've got from it. They have now approved new tube stock for the Bakerloo line and Piccadilly lines, so they'll be part of the new tube for London project. They'll then replace both those lines with new tube trains by the end of the decade, and then potentially see replacing the Central line trains with these as well. So commonality between 3 separate lines, and then the Jubilee, Northern and Victoria lines, which run the 95, 96 and 09 stocks. Well, they're not set to be replaced for about 30, 40 years, so they'll keep them running until time comes to replace them. And also in regards to the Waterloo and City line, nobody really knows what's going to happen to that one, because the 1992 stocks probably won't transfer, given that, the new tube for London's going to be fully ATO, while the Waterloo and City lines are too short really to run ATO trains, and so, yeah, it's a bit of a who knows scenario of that one. I mean, between 1940 and 1991, the Waterloo and City line ran its second rolling stock. So it had original gate stock for this line, and then they had the original stock, I can't remember the tops code for it. It was like 482, 483, could be wrong. So they ran that, then they introduced 1992 stocks, then the I'm terrible at my tops codes, I do apologise. They then introduced 1992 stock for the Waterloo and City, painted blue. Then when TfL took over the service, they reinstated them back to 1992 stocks, so they took out the mainline modifications, painted them back in their red. That was during the 2006 renovations. And then, they'll now run continually until they decide it's time to replace it. If you have travelled down to the Waterloo line, do you have a moment to come look around the platforms? A lot of it still keeps its original Network South East colours. So for example, the platform floor, part of the paving on it, has the original NSC logos. The trim on the platforms still have the original red, blue and yellow. And there's a few mementos down there of the original deep level line. Same for if you ever travel down to Moorgate or part of the Great Northern line down between Moorgate and Finchley Roads. We've got 3 deep level stations, and well, they are now mainline again, but still have a lot of memento as to what they used to look like back in the early days. And also, they're rather bland stations, and so also kind of a showcase of what TfL stations could look like, as they have like no pattern to them, no real culture, no real look to them. They are very, very bland stations. You have Moorgate, you have Highbury and Islington, and then you have another station, I can't remember, Old Street, I think. Because the train comes out of the tunnel at Drayton Park, I believe, which is just out of the Arsenal Stadium, Emirates. There's 3 level stations. It comes out at Drayton Park and then runs on the surface to Finsbury Park. Right, next station, our final station, Harrow Wealdstone. Harrow Wealdstone used to be the site of another service, the service to Belmont, sorry, service to Stanmore via the Belmont Line. So originally the Belmont Line was created as an extra service for those who didn't live in London, were like the big CEOs of company and therefore didn't have to travel on peak times, could travel off peak and at a time that suits them. So Belmont was a very rich area. You had lots of company CEOs, you had a lot of big business people and just big people who lived in that area. And so a local entrepreneur decided to build a railway line connecting that rather large estates to Harrow Wealdstone Station, but very soon after saw competition with the Metropolitan Line, which had just built a new station at Stanmore. Nowadays part of the Jubilee Line, and at one point part of the Bakerloo. That's a whole nother story. So the line between Belmont and Warwick Junction was unpopular because you had to make a change for going into London, while the Metropolitan Line could go in direct. So it was a short-lived line, and by the mid-1900s it was pretty much shut down and gone forever. So the original Metropolitan Line, so they had branching out to Stanmore, which is now part of the Jubilee Line between Wembley Park and Stanmore. Then they transferred it to the Bakerloo Line in the early 1900s. So the Bakerloo Line ran from Stanmore to Charing Cross. Then in the late 1980s they decided that they needed to kind of split up the Bakerloo Line services to allow for easier running of the line. And so they transferred the Stanmore to Charing Cross service over to the Jubilee Line, initially in 1989, and then in 1999, so 10 years later, then it opened up the extension between Green Park and Stratford. So the original Bakerloo Line stroke Jubilee Line platforms are still available at Charing Cross, and I believe they still do keep a mail connection as well, in the very rare occasion that they do need to use it. But for the most part, that line is now long gone, and only really gets used as like a set for movies. So, for example, James Bond had a scene filmed at that station. I believe the BBC Sherlock used that station as well as part of its filming, and there's a couple of films down the line as well that actually films there. But yes, it was originally the Stanmore to Wembley Park used to be Metropolitan, then it became Bakerloo, and then it became Jubilee. Thank you for completing this run. Let's see how you performed. In a second. Yeah, red light, so presumably it's the point where I go to the siding, walk back to the front of the train, turn around, and then eventually make my way back south again. So, that took us 53 minutes, we drove 14.6 miles, and, well, we didn't walk at all this one, was in the seat from start to finish. Level 21 on the character, level 14 on the Bakerloo, level 24 on the 1972 stock, so enough awareness points to hit 25 gold medal, and overall, not a bad run. Our worst stop was probably that of Edgware Road, yeah, with 5 yards out, which on a mainline train, wouldn't seem that much, but for the undergrounds, that was our train in the tunnel, and just about our first passenger's doors in the actual platform itself, so not bad. Not bad overall. I think we did alright with that one. In terms of speed limits, you can see for the most part, we were following them. Perhaps a few minor hiccups here and there, but nothing really to complain about. So, yeah, that brings us to an end of our full run here on the Bakerloo Line. We have one more scenario to go, taking stock. That'll be our mission for tomorrow. Otherwise, yeah. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Hope you enjoyed some of the historic facts about the Bakerloo Line and some of the London Underground history as well. And, yeah, let's say I've got one more to go. And so, tune in tomorrow to see how that goes. You guys take care. Thank you very much for watching. And have a good one. Bye bye.